whatever it is. Okay, so we're on Yud Zayin Amud Bet. Okay, and as I just mentioned before we start, I'm going to be away the next 3 weeks.
3? Oh, 3. Okay.
Okay, you don't read. So you said you read your emails.
I said I don't.
Oh,
that's
you don't?
what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was complaining about myself. I mean.
So I was going to be away 2 weeks for Yontif because we're going away tomorrow.
Next week I remember.
Right. Next week, this week, and next week, and then I have to go to a school the week after. I thought I could leave on Tuesday, but I have to leave before the class. Okay, so.
So this you sent this email last Sunday. When did
I sent it yesterday, or last night, or this morning. I can't remember. Last night. Okay. Here we go. There you go. So I see I need to send another email. Okay, now.
No, I have it.
Good. So this Mishnah is about events or starting certain malachos that you have to start them early enough, according to, you'll see the machlokas Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai. So according to Beis Shammai, you need to start them early enough for the malacha to be completed, or at least a significant part of the malacha to be completed before Shabbos starts. Okay, so in other words, you can't do it 1 second before Shabbos, even though you're doing nothing on Shabbos. It's happening as a result of your actions. That's the basic theme that runs through pretty much all of the items in this Mishnah. Okay, so it's back on Shabbos. We left Yud Ches Davar aside, and we're back to Shabbos. Beis Shammai Omrim, this is about dio, ink. In Shorin dio, you can't soak ink. The samamonim or samonim are types of colors and dyes. Samamonim can actually also means medications. In this case, it means poisons, right? Samamovis. But in this case, it means it's usually referring to the dyes that you soak the plant into some kind of solvent. It could be water if it's a water-based dye, and it will extract the color. Okay. The kashinim was some kind of food given to animals. They call it veg. I don't know.
Veg means vegetable. Veg means just grass.
Well, machal behema. Bina balaz. Bina? Where's our French expert? Vina maybe. Vitza? Vina. It's I think the Sansino calls it vetch or something.
That's Old English for like
whatever it is. It's a fodder. So, but whatever they are, let's assume there's some kind of seed or semi-grain or something. You've got to soak them in order for them to be edible for the animals. Even the animals have to have some preparation. So it's some kind of bean. Either it's going to be a grass, which is going to be some kind of grain, or it's going to be some kind of bean, which is going to be some kind of legume. Well, that's why what they really eat in those days is either going to be, grains, or kitnias, or beans. That's why this whole idea of the Gezeirah of kitnias or Pesach made a whole lot of sense back in the day, right? Because if they didn't have grain, the other staple was beans and bean products and peas and so forth. That was the staple.
Yeah, so what are you saying?
So that's why the Gezeirah of kitnias for Pesach made a whole lot of sense to Ashkenazic Jewry, because they could get confused. They were used together. They could make similar items with them. Okay. We've taken kitnias to a new level in modern day Pesach, right?
Yeah, okay.
But I'm saying, but the original Gzera was actually a very logical Gzera. So El Kadesh Yashua Mibojom. This who says is Beis Shammai says is Beis Hillel Matir. Beis Hillel says no. As long as I start the process, as long as I put them into the water while it's still daylight, I get it in right before the sun goes down. That's fine. Okay. Beis next.
Shorin again is.
Shorin is to soak.
To soak.
Okay. So now we have about pishtan. Pishtan is flax, right? And flax had to be processed, and one of the things that they used to process it to whiten it was they would put it into an oven, so that the threads of the pishtan of the flax, which were going to become linen, would somehow absorb the heat or the steam, and this would whiten them to become whiter or clearer or cleaner. Okay, so that's a process. Takes time. So once again, Beis Shammai Omrim Ein Nosnim Unin Shel Pishtan. Unin are bundles of flax into the tanur. El Kadesh Yafhilo Mibod Yom. Unless there's enough time that they will become heated up from hevel, like steamed up from the oven, that will begin the process. They'll become whitened into it. So that's one. You can't. So once again, Beis Shammai says you got to put enough time that they'll reach whitening temperature. Veloas at Semra layore, and Semra was the wool they put into a yore, was a big pot that they boiled it. And once again, this was elakadei shiklat ayin, except until the color would take hold of it. So this was that they wanted to color the wool. They had it in colored water. Well, the water dye was in some kind of liquid. They put the wool in, and there was a process of time that in the fire, the heat would cause it to be absorbed into the wool. How much time? I don't know, but it's, whatever it was.
Put in water that absorbs the color.
Correct.
That's how they dye today.
But this was not just water. This the yora is a big pot. They put it into a pot. The pot was
heated up.
Heated up. Right.
So Beit Shammai is saying up to some point. So far, he didn't say how far, but at least it has to reach some particular level.
You've got to start. Some part has to happen.
Right.
That the tseva, the coloration of this dye, is going to take hold and be absorbed into it. So to some extent, right? Once again, before Shabbos, Beis Hillel says, okay, you can do it right a minute before Shabbos. Okay, next third case. They're all very disparate cases, especially the next ones. You can't set up traps. Trap does not mean it's going to kill it; it's going to trap the animal, right? Okay, so chaya, like it could be a deer, tzad tzvi, and the trap. We're assuming the trap is not going to be a snap trap.
We're assuming these are live traps,
right? Or actually, maybe it's not just to eat. Maybe it's going to be to use for the pelts, right? It could be a snap trap.
Okay.
But the point is to catch the animal.
To catch the animal, right?
Alive,
catch the animal or to catch the animal, right? And ophos, the same thing. Some kind of trap that would come down upon birds. They had like some kind of I don't know what they would put. They dig a pit, and they'd put some kind of leaves on top or something, or branches, and then they'd have some food attached to a pole. The bird would go in, pull the pole, the board would come down, and push the bird into the pit. That's how they catch the bird. Okay, so it could be catching a bird for meat, could be catching a bird for feathers, whatever it is. And then you set it up before Shabbos, and then it would take place on Shabbos. Vidogim, and the same thing, a trap for to catch fish. Elakadei, that you set up, elakadei shiatsuda mibod yom, that you would, they would be set up before day. Beis Hillel matir, and Beis Hillel allowed you to do it right away, right before Shabbos. So all of these cases are similar, once again, to the same idea. You've got to kind of assume that it's all put together before. This is a little different because you have here an animal involved. An animal makes independent decisions. Right? You put the tzemer or the pishtan in before Shabbos, it's either chemical reactions based upon the laws of physics and the laws of chemistry. So either it's going to absorb or not absorb. But here the animal is making its own decision. So nonetheless, Beis Shammai says you still have to do it enough time before Shabbos, that there's enough time
that they could have gotten
that it could be caught. Right? Kadei shiatsudu. Not that it is caught, but you have enough time that it would be able to be caught and before, right? Okay? And once again, Beis Hillel says no, it can be even done on 2 minutes before Shabbos. Correct. Okay. Okay. Now, what is the concern that Beis Shammai really is concerned about? So we'll see about what Beis Shammai is going to talk about. But some of the concern is that you may it's not only the malachas being taking place on Shabbos. There may be ancillary things like you may want to fix the coals or move the coals, or to move it closer or further, so on Shabbos itself. So even though it looks like it's on autopilot, nonetheless, Beis Shammai says you have to do it before.
No, but it's really gotten underway. That's the thing. It's not like it's just starting. It's advanced to some extent, and then you might want to figure, okay.
Right. Okay. Next case. Beis Shammai omrim ein mochim l'nochri. You can't sell to a non-Jew except before Shabbos, and the following things: v'antonim imo, and you don't help him load his donkey, put the load on the donkey. V'in magbin alav, and you don't put this his load on his back. That he's obviously going to be going out for out of Shabbos, walking for Shabbos. Then magbin alav, some tonim imo, it means helping him load his donkey. Magbin alav probably means putting the load upon him, his shoulders. El kadei she'yageh lemakom karov. That unless the guy has enough time to come to a place that he will get there while it's still daylight, and he will not be going outside probably the Tchum Shabbos, right? Or that he will not be carrying on Shabbos outside the Rosh Hashanah is probably more likely.
That's an amazing
Yeah, I don't get that.
Well, once again, you see we've gone to a third level. Well, first level is inanimate. This next level is animals. Third level is about a human being who can make their own decision. But according to Beis Shammai, there's this gzeira that I can't allow him to do it. It can't look like I'm allowing him to be Machal Shabbos. Okay? All right, Beis Hillel matir. Once again, the same thing. Beis Hillel says it's okay. You can give it to the guy right one second before Shabbos. Okay. This is, by the way, a question that comes up about not in this country so much, but came up in the United States about sending mail on Erev Shabbos. Right.
We're here too. Oh, because it gets delivered on Shabbos.
Yeah, there's no. Well, I guess there is delivery, and internally they're moving things around. There is no delivery here on Shabbos.
No delivery on Shabbos, but maybe they pick it up or whatever.
Right. So the basic rule was you're not asking the guy to actually work for you directly. He's working for the government, of the United States Postal Service, which is a subsidiary of the government. It's really independent now. And the only time you're really requiring him is if you send it as like express service with Saturday delivery.
Right. Yeah, he's doing it for you.
Right, then he's doing it for you. Okay. Then he's actually doing it for you. Okay. Next case, similarly moving a similar kind of thing. Beis Shammai omrim ein nosnim oros le'abdon. You can't give over skins to be tanned, to be, what do you call them, the chemicals that work on them.
They worked on it.
Right.
Avodah, maybe.
But lavdam means to...
doesn't mean to work on them. It means
but it's meaning like you're putting the chemicals into the system, or you're softening it up.
Yeah.
You're processing the R. V'lokelim lekobes nachri, and this is one that's probably even closer to the mail service. You can't give your kelim or your clothes to a non-Jewish cleaner. El kadesh yasu mibod yom, unless there's enough time for him to finish the skins during daytime, or to do the cleaning during daytime. Right? Okay. Who says this? Beis Shammai, and what has happened? Uvakulam Beis Hillel matirim im hashemesh. And in all of the above cases, this is just a summation about this, that the Beis Hillel allows this to be done as long as the sun is still shining. Biot hachamos arachas. So 1 second before sunset, you can still give it to the guy. Once again, you're not telling him to do this on either coin. You're right. You're simply just asking him. You're just giving him it right before Shabbos. Okay. By the way, is it the same for white clothing and for colored clothing? Which one takes more time? I don't know if there's a difference. But back in the day, white clothing took more time to
today, if you give something to
today, if you were driving home, let's say for Shabbos, and you went by the dry cleaners and saying, don't give it to them, right? Because let's say it's...
You have to give enough time or something.
Well, I'm saying he's not going to do your stuff right away, right? I mean, you might do it the next day on Shabbos, or might do it on that guy.
The real question is, how long do they take to do it? Like, I don't know, when I was a kid, all the cleaners back in New York, they all had either 1 hour service, or something that said 3 hour service. They always had a big sign, some hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. But of course, you have to pay a premium for that.
Exactly, but if you don't, then it...
But that just means the guy can do it, right?
Right, but if you guys...
But you don't care. You don't want it back there. You just say, here.
You have 2 days or 3 days, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
You said Sunday morning, though.
Yeah, but you said like Monday morning or Tuesday morning.
Right. But the truth is, the guy can come in Saturday night. He doesn't.
He can do what he wants.
Right. I mean, the reality is, I don't know how long these things take to work in a dry cleaner.
It doesn't work on your shirt.
But I mean, if you drop it off 5 minutes before Shabbos and say you're going to pick it up 5 minutes after Shabbos, then you're in trouble, right?
Saying,
so you have to leave some room there.
No, but I'm saying, you're going home, right?
You drop
it off. A little
bit
late.
Right.
But you had your stuff in your car. If you just drop the stuff in, and I'll pick it up Monday, Tuesday. You don't care. You just want to get it in, right?
By the way, this is a non-Jewish cleaner, right? If you had a Jewish cleaner would be much more complicated.
Of course, a non-Jewish.
Right. Okay. So, but once again, the non-Jew is a non-Jew, and he does what he wants to do. But you've got to make sure that you're not appearing to be helping him along in the malacha and Shabbos itself. So that's the whole machlokas Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Okay. Now, and I just mentioned about the colored and the white clothing. This comes up in right now, next moment. Rav Shimon Gamliel, Noagim Hayu Beis Abba. So Rav Shimon Gamliel is referring to his father's house, Rabbi Gamliel. She'nosim Kli Lavan Lekoves Nachri Shlosh Yamim Kodem HaShabbos. They would give white clothing, which is very hard to restore the white, right? to bleach it, get it back to where it was, and they would be machmir upon themselves. Normally, they're from the Hillel family level. This is the family genealogy. Nonetheless, they were machmir for themselves to follow Beis Shammai in this case. Doesn't mean there's no halacha. It means they were machmir for themselves 3 days before for white clothing, which took much more time to process. Probably had to let it soak or something, or pre-wash it and post-wash it. I don't know. V'shavin elu. And now the last thing is both Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai actually agree to the following things. Believe it or not, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree. Shatonim korod beit habad v'yakule agad. That you can load up, and I'll show you what the picture is in a moment, the press, where they're pressing out the olives and they're pressing out, I think it's the wine itself. Let's see, here they have, right.
You can load the press.
In other words, here we go. This is an olive press in this little handy dandy book that's meant for kids. Okay, but you see, this is the
beam.
These are the olives in the olive pan or basket. They're going to put them in here, and they load the baskets one on top of the other, and then they put this big beam, and they let the beam sit on it. The weight of the beam squishes out the oil, right? Then that's one. What was the other one? Hagat. What was the next one? Case Igule Hagat.
Yeah.
Igule Hagat is this is the grapes. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they put like big stones. I think these are stones.
Yeah.
Stones on top of the grapes, and it's obviously just the pressure presses down and squeezes out the juice, the grape juice. Okay, now which means you're doing it on Erev Shabbos.
Right. You can load these things.
And you're going to come back on Sunday morning, and guess what? All the olive oil is going to be out of there, and all the grape juice is going to be out here.
Oh.
Now, who says this?
Both of them.
Both of them say it.
This sounds even worse because this is clearly taking place in Shabbat.
Right. So the question is, why would Beis Shammai agree to this? So there's a long Rashi that explains it. Rashi says that what could be the malacha here? What is the malacha of squeezing? Where's their squeezing? So the answer is there's a whole bunch of separation processes that took place in the Beis Hamikdash when they had to prepare the samamonim, the dyes, and the Mishnah in the 6th, 7th parak talks about this like bread. So they had, and this is a whole idea of borer, of separating things one from another. So one of the things they had to do was they had to separate the shells, the husk, or the staff from the kernel, right? And how would they do that?
Winnow it.
They would winnow it. What's winnowing?
That's like a sieve.
So before they throw it up in the air, what do they do? There's zoreh. There's the first. They also have to stamp on it.
They have to break.
They have to break
the kernels from the
correct.
Which kernel are we talking?
Like you have to break the wheat kernel, the wheat seed.
What are we
Talking about wheat.
Wheat. No, we're talking about wheat.
Now we're going to wheat.
You got to break the wheat off from the stem, and then you got to throw it up in the air so that.
So the light.
Okay.
The light stuff goes in. Yeah, there's a couple steps.
Here's the process. So first thing is this had something called. This is called here's dush. Dush is, I don't know what they call this in English, where they got the ox cart, where it's breaking the threshing. Thank you. It's called threshing, not threshing.
Threshing board.
Right. You said that last week.
Yeah, because I looked it up.
This is the thresher. There's a threshing plow, or it's actually a type of board, and the cow pulls it around, and basically the weight is going to break the straw off of the kernel, the husk, and I think break as well. Also the husk off of the kernel. I don't know. Okay. Then the next part, this is winnowing, where they throw it up in the air. Right. And then finally, there's what's called, and this is called zoreh. Then there's also called borer. Borer was after they separated all that, they had to take the pebbles that remained out of the away from the little food. Okay. And then they go into grinding itself. Does that make sense? So you have here dash, zoreh, and borer. These are 3 of the 39 malachos. Okay, they're actually very similar, or in terms of what they're doing, they're all doing separating. Right? Borer actually has a lot of implications today. For example, you can't pick out the pits from the fruit. Right. So, for example, the most difficult example, common example is the watermelon pits. You can't take the watermelon pits out of the watermelon. you can take the food out of
the pit.
right? For example, you can eat the apple and leave behind the core, right? But you can't go in and pull out the core from the apple itself. The truth is, if you cored an apple, you're probably taking out some of the apple with it. But the case of the watermelon pits, even though now we've developed pitless,
What? Exactly.
right? Seedless watermelons. But that's a good example of where that's borer, where you're taking out the refuse or the what do you call it? The part that you don't want to use from the part that you want to use. And that was the way that they would actually do it. That was borer hairs where they take out the pebbles. Borer hairs where they're taking out the pebbles that may be still in the grain. Okay? But the bottom line is these are the ways of separation. So Rashi says that by squeezing, and this is what squeezing normally does, squeezing is really separating one part from another, right? You want to squeeze out the juice, you want to squeeze out the juice and leave behind the remainder, the fruit, okay? So really what you would think is this is what we're doing here with the Zigule Agad, or the other one, the Korot Beitabad. That's where the same thing that's also squeezing out. But Rashi points out that before you came to putting on this big heavy log, they stamped onto the grapes and they stamped onto the olives. Probably not using this kind of cow and ox, but with their feet.
Yeah, you showed the picture. There's a picture there. You didn't show it, but it was the picture before.
Right.
The guy was standing on the grapes.
So they would stamp on the grapes, and they would stamp on the olives, they would crack them out, and then that was the first way that they separated. And then to continue the process, right, it doesn't really have this here.
You had it there. Turn the page. You had it. You didn't mention it. Here.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, Archie's pointed out. This is about the grapes, where he's standing on the grapes. He's stomping them down, right? Anyone who's ever done, you're a vinter.
Yeah.
You stamp on the grapes too?
No.
How do you break them down?
Open mouth disease. What? I don't do it anymore. I used to have a machine with spikes that would break them all up.
Okay, but you're a small-time vinter.
Nobody does it. Nobody does it with their feet. Nobody does it with
In
their feet.
Italy, I don't think anymore. They still do it.
I don't know. Back in the, we once went up in the Galil. In the Galil, they have this.
That's for
in the Galil, they have this recreated village.
That's for tourists.
That's for kids. They stand on the grapes and they collect it, and then you put it in a bottle and they give it to you.
They all have machines that
More
go through.
advanced
They
than
have
that,
machines that takes a minute.
Anyways, bottom line, guys. Okay, so Rashi points out that the dash already took place. In other words, all of these examples of things that we had in this Mishnah are examples about malachos that if you were to do them directly on Shabbos, they would be asim in Torah. For example, tzad. You can't catch an animal on Shabbos, right? So the gezerah is, if you put the trap up before Shabbos, you have to have enough time for it to catch someone. You can't carry on Shabbos. If you gave it to the non-Jew and he's going to carry, does he have enough time to do it, or it's not your problem? On all the other examples that we had in the Mishnah. So here already, dash, separation has already taken place because you stomped on the grapes or you stomped on the olives. So all this is doing is continuing the malach of dash that already took place and already was done. So therefore, even Beis Shammai, separation can be a lot of things. Separation is going to be whether you stomp on an item to separate the husk from the kernel, whether you're going to throw it up in the air and it blows away.
Is separating okay or not okay?
So it's not okay in certain ways,
saying.
correct. But it was done already before Shabbos by stomping on the grapes before Shabbos. The process was done.
This iguli were done. The iguli with the stones we put on top or not?
Yes.
So why
but that's why they do it?
Yeah, so if it's done, why am I
done,
doing it?
Because
saying.
So the answer is all the examples. Okay, let's back up. The Mishnah is all about cases that you can't do things on Shabbos, right? So what do you have to do? You have to start it early enough before Shabbos that some of it can take place or has enough time to take place. So I have to put the pishtan into the fire that some of it will be enough time to absorb, be whitened. And the samamani will have enough time to get some of the color.
We agree.
Not all the color. So therefore, what I was saying, some of this malacha has to be done before Shabbos, or enough time to do before Shabbos, that even if it continues on its own on autopilot, right? But some of it happened before Shabbos. So Rashi explains that when it comes to these comes to the press, some of the malacha took place before Shabbos.
Because they piled it up before Shabbos?
No, because they stamped on the grapes and they stamped on the olives and they separated some of the juice out, even though that juice is probably still all together in the pan, in the basket. but you've actually started the process, then you've done enough of it that you already dash. The fact that it continues afterwards and you put the press down,
I got you.
right? Now you're not doing anything on Shabbos.
I got you.
It's happening on its own. But what did you do before Shabbos? You did all the stamping of before Shabbos.
Right.
So the malacha min of dash was done, and you actually put the press down, or you put the beam down, or you put the stones down before Shabbos, and that was done before Shabbos. So no, the fact that it continues on Shabbos, all the examples before continued on Shabbos, but you had to do something and have enough time to start the process before Shabbos.
So in a way, they're agreeing with Beis Shammai, because that's what Shammai always said, as long as you did a certain amount.
So that's why Beis Shammai says, so it's actually reversed, that's why Beis Shammai is agreeing with Beis Hillel.
I think
Correct.
Beis Shammai. Well, in a sense, except Beis Shammai always said you got to do a certain amount.
And in this case, something was done.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Hillel's agreeing with.
So that's why this example, this last case about the press, is actually where Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree, because it's an example of where the malach already was done, not completely done, because you got to still put the press down to get the secondary liquid out, right? And by the way, after they probably did that, they still had to extract more liquid, probably by heating it, right? You can heat the olives to get more liquid come out.
What about the grapes?
They do that today.
They do use solvents.
Okay, maybe
They
solvent.
use solvents and they take the solvent. What I understand.
Okay, but back in the day, probably they put some heat used heat as well. Okay, at any rate, all right. So this is
The Mishnah.
This is the Mishnah. The Mishnah so far so good. So each of the cases really are pretty much independent. Okay, so the Gemara says now, we'll go back to the first case. Remember the first case? First case we just did was about putting the water into the, putting the dye, putting the ink or the coloration or the vetch into the water, right? And you needed enough time that it would be able to be absorbed into the water itself, that some of the dye would be absorbed into the water. Kidei she yashuru mibod yom. So that's what Beis Shammai said. That's not, by the way, a whole long period of time. The periods of time become longer with the other ones. So, but at any rate, it's more than you're not really doing extracting it. You would think if you really want to extract dye and get it into the liquid, what would you want to do? You want to stir it. You want to squeeze it into it. Right? You're simply just dropping this vegetable that has the organic dye in it into the water. You're simply putting the vetch, these kashinim, into the water. You're not even doing anything to make sure that the water is moved around. You take the ink, which is this heavy ink, and you put it into the water. It probably looks like a blot on one side, and the other end of the pool, or the other end of the pitcher, is probably very, very, very light, right? So but that seems to be considered already the malacha of coloring, of tzoveya, which is, by the way, that is one of the 39 malachos. Tzoveya is one of the 39 malachos. So the Gemara says, Man tana nesinas mayim l'dio zuhi shriyasan. Who is the opinion which says that simply putting water into the ink, this is the process of soaking it? You don't need anything else to do. In other words, you didn't move it, you didn't stir it, you didn't kind of squeeze it, right? And to do anything with it. So who is this? So Amar Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef says, Rebbe hits Rebbe, the Tanya. Echad nosin at the kemach, v'echad notin at hamayim, hoachron chayav. So this is about the case of the dough, right? If you want to make dough, so what do you have to do in terms of you have flour and you have water? What do you do?
Put
the flour and the water in together, and then what do you do?
You stir it, usually.
You knead them, right? That's a malacha called lisha. Right, one of the things you cannot do on Shabbos, it's lisha, it's kneading it up. What happens though if you didn't do anything to the water and dough?
You just pour it in the water.
You pour the water and you pour the dough in.
Nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen. Not even dough. The flour. You put the flour.
It doesn't mix.
Some of it won't mix. Some of it will. Some of it will. Some of it won't.
Okay.
So we all agree that that's not really full kneading. It's going to be a pretty rotten challah. Right? Okay, we all agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, I mean, we had this. My wife makes challah. She used a bread maker. And after a few weeks before, but maybe 2 weeks right before Shoshana, the bread maker died. It kapaigered right in the middle. Okay, right in the middle. And it's a good thing we were home because you know the way these things do, they stir it up and then it warms it up so it should rise.
Right, got it right.
But it was rising without having stirred it up. The motor actually just burnt out. Right, and that was it. So and so I went to get a new one. But I'm saying, but you realize, and you know what? Eventually she made challah with it. It was an unusual type of challah because you could still see what it had been. But we were able to save some of it. But you realize you take flour and you take water. The next part is actually mixing them up.
Absolutely.
So I got two people here. So one person has got the water, one person has got the flour. Okay? And what would you normally expect would be the malach of lisha, put the flour and the water in, and I start kneading it.
Right.
If I didn't knead it, am I doing the malach of lisha?
I don't think so.
Doesn't look like it.
Doesn't look
However, Rebbe says if the moment you put the flour and the water together, that's considered lisha.
Whoever puts the last one.
Which means who's ever putting the last one in, if I have two people working at it, I have one person working at it, right hand, left hand, it's one person, it's no brainer. But I have Reuven and Shimon. Reuven puts the water in and Shimon puts in the kemach. Even if nothing happens, nobody stirs it, both Reuven and Shimon stand back and wait to see what happens, the last person who puts something in is whether the flour or whether the water, that is considered enough for lisha. So that's what the Gemara says. I'll read it inside and then we'll see how it's going to apply to us here. Some Rabbi Yosef, who's the author of our Mishnah, Rebbe he the Tanya. We have a Mishnah, we have a Brisa later on in the end of Masechet Shabbos, and this is not about Samamonim, this is about Kemach. Echad notenet a Kemach, v'echad notenet a Mayim, hoachon chayev, divrei Rebbe. Right? The Rebbe says the moment you put in the last guy is chayev. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, or Rabbi Yehuda says, Eino chayev ad shigabel. Okay, you're not chayiv until you begin kneading it. So Reuven puts in the water, Shimon puts in the flour, the flour, and then Reuven comes back and starts kneading it. He's chayiv,
Right.
even though when he put it in, it was just water without the flour, or vice versa. So Rebbe though says just mixing them in together is going to be the same. So what are we trying to say? Rebbe's opinion simply says mixing items, just putting them into the same bowl without doing any actual manual work is enough to make it lisha. The same thing is going to be enough for tzoveya. Simply just putting the ink in, or putting in the coloration, the dye, the plant with the dye in it, or putting in the kvetch, the kashinim for the animals into the water, that alone is going to make it enough for tzoveya, okay, for coloring. Okay? So that's the Gemara says. So whose opinion is this Mishnah going to be? Rebbe. Okay? Not Rabbi Yossi, but Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi. Okay? So Amalei Abaye. So Abaye says maybe it's not true. Maybe even Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi is our Gemara has him, who says that in the case of dough, you have to actually do the actual kneading. It's not simply enough to put them together. Maybe in our case, he will say that it's sufficient even just to put in the plant into the water. What's the difference between the two of them? It's very clear, practically.
Go by itself.
The plant eventually will go by itself. It may take a longer period of time for the dye to be absorbed out of the plant into the water, or for the water to absorb into the kashinim, or for the dio to kind of mix into the solvent of the water, whatever it is. But it'll happen sooner or later. However, when you have flour and water, if you don't do anything with them, it's dead. Nothing's going to happen. It's not going to even become matzah. It stays, the half will be dry and half will be wet and nothing will happen. So Abaye says, you don't have to say it's Rebbe. It could even be the guy who argues with Rabbi Yossi. V'dilma adkan lo kama Rabbi Yossi, ela bekemach de bar gibelhu. That kemach is something that you can knead. It's thick. You have to make it work. That's gibel. Avod yod lav bar gibelhu ema lechayev. So, but the dio, which is not that thick that you have to knead it. Maybe even Rabbi Yossi will say he's chayev. So no, it doesn't have to be Rebbe. It can even be Rebbe and Rabbi Yossi in the case of kneading. Both of them would agree in our case. Simply soaking them will be enough. Okay, is that good?
Yeah.
Now the Gemara just has a final piece about this, which is going to revolve around whether the word we're going to read is afer or afar. What's afer? What's afar with an ayin? Afar is dirt. Okay. Dust, dirt. What's afer? Ashes. Okay. V'anochi afar ve'afer. Right. Dirt, dust, and ashes. Okay. So just keep in mind, aleph is the afer, ayin is the afar, and the difference will be. It may have to do with how much work you need to work to mix things together. Which would need more to mix things together? Dirt or ashes? Well, let's hope it's dirt.
I don't know.
Ashes are light. Ashes are light. Probably less.
Ashes are light. Yeah, right.
Ashes will absorb water.
Right.
Also,
Yes,
yeah.
ashes.
Right, because ashes are made of burnt wood. Right,
Yeah.
correct. Correct. All right. So here's the Gemara's the Bryce they bring. Echad notein eto efer. Did I skip a line? Lo so kadaitach. So the Gemara says, did you no, maybe not so kadaitach, because you could have thought the Tanya. We have a Bryce that says as follows. This is about I think it's about the paraduma. Echad notein eto efer. V'echad notein eto mayim. Is this about Paraduma? Is this about Shabbos too?
Well,
I think it's Shabbos.
But it sounds like the Torah told you to mix
Yeah.
Efer with water.
Okay.
So it could be in more than one place, but certainly
Paraduma they do.
Sota, don't you?
Well,
I'm sorry?
also-
Yeah.
Is it Sota? Okay,
I
good.
don't know, I'm saying that's what you mix.
Sota.
Sota,
Maybe
yeah.
Sota, maybe Sota.
Yeah.
Could be Sota, yeah.
Is it Sota?
I don't know.
Was it Efer though?
Yeah, they took, didn't they take from the
No,
ground?
they tore, yeah, they burnt
What does
up,
Mr. Scroll say? What's the case?
They take
Case
the
is,
water,
I think
they
the
take the water and they put the dirt in the water,
And then
and then they take the scroll. And
the
they
scroll
and they
and
put
dip it
scroll
in the
water.
Efer, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember. Can't remember.
where's it Shabbos?
I don't think where in Shabbos did it talk about Efer and Mayim?
I'll take a quick look. Must say there somewhere. No.
I don't know. Here, look. That's not too good.
6, 7. It's making clay. Okay, it's making clay. Making clay on Shabbos. Okay?
Maybe for bricks or something.
For binyan, it's for binyan. Okay? It's making clay on Shabbos for binyan. Okay? So you're making clay. You're making clay for boneh. Boneh is also one of the 39 malachos. So how do you make this? You're going to make some kind of clay or dirt with water, or maybe you'll see it might be even ashes are mixed in as well to build something that has more substance to hold it up. Okay. So the Gemara says as follows: similar kind of scenario. Two guys working together. The Tanya, echad notena to afer, ve'echad notena to mayim. One guy's putting in afer. What's afer with an aleph? Ashes. And one is putting in water. So once again, they're mixing something together that they're going to use to build into some kind of, I'm not sure what, some kind of primitive clay or some kind of mortar that will come together, some kind of paste. So once again, ha'achron chayav. Divrei Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer Achigobel. Same machlokas about these two guys with the working with Afer and Mayim as was before about needing Kemach and Mayim. Okay? So the Gemara says that looks to be the same kind of thing where you don't really need a whole lot of work to mix ashes together with water. Right? They'll automatically, eventually, one will be absorbed into the other. If you do nothing, eventually the mix will eventually absorb one into another. Slowly, but it'll happen. So Gemara says, so that's the same thing. So Gemara says, V'dilma my afer, afar. No, says the Gemara. Maybe it's really, when it says afer, it's really understood as not afer ashes, but afar. Right? Now I know afar and afer are written differently. But in an oral text, kind of Masorah, it could be possible to confuse the two, or sometimes the terms we use loosely, right? I am dust and ashes. Okay, what is dust? Afar. Afar is really dirt, right? So my afer afar. The bar gibel is. So no, maybe that's the case. That specifically over there is a case about where you require it to mix it together. So you're trying to tell me that you see that Rabbi and Rabbi Yossi argue even if you don't have to mix things together.
Right.
No, maybe that's a case of afar and water, and you need to mix them together for clay. That is why Rabbi Yossi says it's not going to be chayiv until you mix them. Rabbi will say he's going to be chayiv the moment you put them together. Right? And Rebbe will be therefore the author of our Mishnah. It simply says putting dio into water is fine, and therefore putting water and flour is fine, and therefore putting water and ashes and water and dirt will be fine. Rabbi Yossi will say no. And for making dough, I have to mix them, I have to knead them, I have to combine them and knead them. For making clay, I've got to combine them and knead them and work them to make the clay. If I don't do that, simply putting the two together, afar and mayim, I'm not going to be chayev. So in other words, our Mishnah can't be both Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda because we think now it's not Afer, it's really Afar. So the Gemara says, wait. V'otanya Efer. It said Efer. So the Gemara says, no, but wait, V'otanya Afar. It says we have another Bryce and the reading was Afar. So no, it's not just a confusion. The Masorah, there apparently were two different Bryces. One said Efer, one said Afar. So the Gemara says, you're right. Mi de Gabi Adodi Tanya. Both of these Bryces were not written the same way. In other words, one Bryce obviously seems to follow one tradition. The other Bryce seems to follow another tradition. So Rashi says that there were many different organizational structures of Bryces. There's Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shaya. So one version was Rabbi Chia's version, one version was Rabbi Shai's version, and in one of them it said Afar, and one of them said Efer. So in other words, if you say the answer really is basically whatever version you want will tell you it's either going to be Rebbe is the author of the Mishnah, or both Rebbe and Rabbi Yossi are going to be the author of the Mishnah.
Right.
That's where the conclusion of this Gemara. Okay, so far so good. Okay, next piece. Okay, so that takes care of the first example. Now we have an example here, Torah Bana Poskim, Mayim Legina. Okay, you want to water your field on Shabbos. Okay, and I know today we have all these watering systems that go off at night or early in the morning. Sure. Back in those days, they didn't. So what do? You kind of open up the ditch, or you build a ditch so that the water will flow and drip in the whole Shabbos. It's going to water this garden of yours during Shabbos, so that you start the process, because you can't start the process on Shabbos. Right, so you make this little hole on the edge of the lake or well or trough or channel, so that you get a slow drip running into drip irrigation. Drip irrigation in the old days. It's going to run the entire Shabbos. Okay, so this Bryce is going to list a whole number of items that are very similar to that, and build very similar to what we had here. All of these examples are the same idea, that you start work before Shabbos, and it continues into Shabbos. Right? And each of them is going to be a subject of discussion in the Gemara itself. So the Gemara is going to spend a lot of time on this Brysa. So we're going to kind of mark the Brysa in our brain, and we will have to come back to it when we get to the second parts of the items in the Brysa. Podgem Mayim Legina Erev Shabbos Im Chashecha. So obviously this is who we following here. It looks like we're following Beis Hillel. You have to choose Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai.
Beis Hillel thinks it's okay.
Beis Hillel says everything's okay as long as you start before Shabbos.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to you pop the hole before Shabbos. Erev Shabbos Im Chashecha, which means Friday as the sun is going down. Mm-hmm. Right at candlelighting time, even later. Umit malet v'lechet kol yom kulo, and it's going to fill up and go the entire day, so that you have the slow drip filling up and watering the garden the entire day of Shabbos. One. Next case. Umanichim mugmar tachas hakelim. Umizgamrim kvolchim kol yom. Mugmar was a type of incense. It was a type of spices that would, it's like an ancient Febreze, okay? But it was an auto Febreze. It's like, you go in the washroom and you hear these things go off on the wall. They have these timers, right? This was the same idea, but it was set off. The incense was released through heat. So if you wanted to have this continual fragrance going, you'd have to put it somehow on a fire of some sort and some kind of utensil that would hold it, and it would release it through the day, and the smell, the fragrance would go and revive the smell of the clothing, or replace the smell of the clothing. Right? You have to remember, ancient world was probably a smellier place than our world. Okay,
no doubt about it.
Right? We all agree. Middle Ages. Okay, so at any rate, this is something this is called mugmar. Sometimes, by the way, they used it around meals as well. Okay, so manicha mugmar tachat hakelim, and they have Erev Shabbos in parentheses. Umid gamrim v'olchim kol yom kulo, and it would go the entire day. Would continue to set off this fragrance throughout the entire day, and would permeate the clothing in the house. Okay, same idea. Next, umanichim gafris tachas hakelim. Okay, umid gafrim. Gafris is
sulfur. That's
sulfur.
Really
okay,
surprising.
so it'll be more surprising when I tell you what they use it for. When people have silver or gold utensils, let's take silver, because silver tarnishes. What do they like to do? They like to shine it. And the hardest part about shining up silver and taking off the tarnish is the tarnish still sticks into the indentations and the etchings, right?
Okay, right.
So yeah, you have to try to get a toothpick and get it out, because otherwise people will see that it's already tarnished and we're tarnished. We all agree upon that?
Yeah.
Right? Now, it appears that in the olden times, days ago, was exactly the reverse. They wanted to use the sulfur to create some kind of tarnish on the utensils that would therefore highlight the etchings that did not absorb the tarnishing. Okay? So if you can think of your old silver or silver plate that has been cleaned and polished and see that you can see inside the filigree that is still dark, which you say, oh, I wish I could clean that in there, that was the Maila that they had. Okay? Yeah. So, and apparently to do this, and to have this tarnished stuff that the etchings were not tarnished and showed out, this was rather the highlight of eating, of the society. So you wanted to do this on Shabbos as well. So therefore, as a result, I don't know why sulfur.
The sulfur tarnishes. That's what tarnishes your silver.
Correct.
Sulfur.
There you go.
That's what he's saying.
So that's right.
No, but that's what
saying
It's the sulfur in the air. It's sulfur in the air.
It's the sulfur in the air.
Sulfur in the air.
There you
Correct.
go.
That's right. He's right. Okay.
Tarnishes.
Tarnishes makes silver
Chemistry,
oxide.
I don't know the chemistry.
The chemistry makes silver oxide. Okay, sulfur oxide is in the air. Sulfur oxide is in the air. The oxide comes out and joins into the silver. You get silver oxide. That's what silver tarnishes. Okay, it's chemistry 101. Now, but so now I'm pointing out is it's the reverse of what we would normally do. So they would take the silver. Kalim are utensils here. In this case, they're the filigreed utensils, and they'd put the silver that's underneath it together with some kind of fire or some kind of thing that would make it smoke. And this would, Rashi says, mashchiros. It would make them dark. It would tarnish the utensils, right? Use a lot of silver.
Except for the scratches.
Except for the scratches that were inside, right? Because I guess the silver tarnish couldn't get in that far on a new coating. V'olchim kol Shabbos kulo, and they would do this the entire Shabbos by itself. Okay. Now that's another case. Now next. Umanichem kilar al gabei ha'ayin. And you can put a kilar is some kind of bandage, some kind of salve on a bandage over the eye. This was some kind of eye potion. Vispalnis, some kind of dressing. Al gabei hamaka. Once again, this looks like it's Erev Shabbos while it's going down, or maybe not. There's a 2 gersos. And misrapes v'holechas kol yom kulo, and it's going to go automatically the entire day. Okay. So in other words, all of these examples are the same thing. They're all examples of things that you did before Shabbos, and it happened automatically as Shabbos was going along. Okay? Except, and the exception is always where you get into trouble. Aval, einotnim chitim latoch rechaim shalmayim. You can't put grain into the mill stones, the water stones, the water mill. Right, this is a water mill that's going. Exactly. Unless they could be ground before Shabbos. Now, that's in other words, we're assuming our mission is like Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel should allow everything. So why can't I simply put the grain into the granary, into the grain millstones, and let it just grind away, and I'll come back after it's finished? Right? The way the stones, millstones work. Right? How do they work? You've got 2 stones, one on top of the other. Yeah. Right, they go around. The weight of the stone, the top stone grinds it, and eventually it comes into the middle where there's a hole, and it comes down to the bottom and goes into some kind of basin you collected. Right, and the water power was hydropower that really kept it going, and this could bring the weight of the millstones, the upper millstone which was grinding, continued to move it around because it was a very heavy stone. Okay, so why would this be different than anything else? Because this thing, it says you got to finish grinding them before Shabbos. So the Brisa actually explains it. The Brisa explains it. The Gemara will have to explain a little more, but the Brisa does give you an answer. My time, what's the reason? So here's the first answer. Amarabba mibnei shemashmad kol, because the way a grindstone works is it works with friction. Right. Now the grindstones are worn down pretty smooth. So as long as there's nothing in the grindstone, in between the grindstones, right, it's going to be quiet. Or even more so, I think they probably can have the water bypass the grindstone. Grindstone. Yeah, I believe the water would bypass the grindstones.
The wheel.
Bypass the wheels, the grindstone wheels, right? And the water wheel was simply just turning. You didn't have them connected by the gears, and it was quiet, right? But the moment that you have the water going in and moving that heavy stone one on top of the other, and you have the friction on top of the grain, it's a lot of grain. We're not talking about a couple of kernels. We're talking about bags and bags. So that's noisy, right? And you hear it's like one thing grinding, like going to a factory floor. One machine going against the other.
You're not going to sit in the mill, they assume, or just the fact that it's making noise?
It's making noise. It makes noise. Avsha Milson knows it disturbs people's Shabbos. Just the noise itself, the grinding of the noise disturbs people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's a noise that bothers people.
Right, I don't know. You have a certain feeling for Shabbos.
Absolutely.
Right? Certain things just kind of like, this is not about a halachic feeling for Shabbos. I stayed in Midtown Manhattan for Shabbos. Once in my life. I was a younger kid. And I got up in the morning and I couldn't believe the hustle and the bustle. Saturday morning, Shabbos morning, I'm walking to shul, was almost like it was Monday morning. Right? You get up here on Shabbos morning, it's quiet.
More or less, yeah.
Even as the day goes along, there's a definite difference. You can see it. Maybe not on Bathurst Street, right? But you see it on the streets around your house. You see it in other neighborhoods as well. People are more relaxed. But once again, if you're going to have the mill was a pretty loud piece of equipment. The entire city heard it. It reverberated. So therefore, the mishmat kol is a way that looks like it's taking away the rest for people from Shabbos. Now, that's Rabbah's interpretation. Okay, so at least we have one interpretation on the floor, on the ground, what this would be. Okay, but that would make the last item different than all the others. Correct? Right. Does that make sense so far? Okay, that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
So Amalei Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef says to Rabbah, and the two of them will go back and forth many times in the Shas. V'lei mamar mishum shvisas kalim. What are you talking about? The fact that it's making noise. Talk about the fact that the keli, the utensil of the mill, is working. You're supposed to work. You're supposed to rest on Shabbos. Your animals are supposed to rest on Shabbos. Laman yanuach shorcha v'chamorcha. And there's an opinion that says your equipment has to rest on Shabbos. And they quote the pasuk in the end of let's see, this is Mishpatim. The Tanya v'chol asher amarti alechem tishameru l'rabos shvisas kelim. That everything that I told you should do. This is the Shabbos comes up before it. And there's Shabbos and Avodah Zarah and other things that are mentioned in this chapter in the end of Mishpatim. Remember, the beginning of Mishpatim talks about interpersonal laws, right? Hurting people and donkeys and boars and shores, the whole Baba Kama. But the second half of Mishpatim actually talks about things that are related to you and God. So the V'chol asher amarti alechem tishameru, and then it says V'shem Elohim achrim lo saskiru lo yishma picha, and then it talks about some holidays. But V'chol asher amarti alechem tishameru. So the Gemara understands that to mean l'rabo shvisas kelim. Okay, so now why do you, Rabbah, say the problem is because it's a secondary or tertiary kind of problem? It's making noise for people. Okay, put a silencer on it. That's the only problem. Is a bigger problem. Shvisas kelim. So why didn't you say that? Shvisas kelim. And in fact, Elam Rav Yosef. Therefore, Rav Yosef says, what's the reason why the mill can't go around? Mishum shvisas kelim. Okay, right. So we have machlokas here between Rabbah and Rav Yosef what the reason actually is. Now Rabbah's reason is what's the reason everybody agrees you can't use the millstone, you can't on Shabbos, even though you put the stuff in before, because of the noise. What's Rav Yosef going to say? What's the reason you can't have the millstone going on Shabbos? Because
Shvitas Kelim.
What's the obvious question that's going to be according to Rav Yosef?
Why didn't you say that?
What about all the other cases? Everything else was fine.
The others are not.
The Mugmar, and the
but the others are not really machines.
So that the Gemara will try to answer. That's not really machines. Okay, not really machines. The Gemara, and that works for most of the responses. So Elam Rav Yosef Mishum Shvisas Kelim. So the Gemara says V'hashda the Amred LaBeis Hillel Islu Shvisas Kelim Deoraisa. So now that you're going to say, what are you, Rav Yosef, saying? That this whole Mishnah, this whole Brisa that we just said, it doesn't say Beis Hillel, but it seems to be following Beis Hillel. You can start everything 1 second before Shabbos, right? And it's a halachic Brisa being brought down. So therefore, now the Beis Hillel says that you can have Kalim working on Shabbos, right? That's what, if you Rav Yosef, that's your premise. not Rabbi's premise, Rav Yosef's premise.
Right.
So Doraisa, Gafris and Mugmar, my time is Shari. So why then can you have the sulfur burning? Why then can you have the Febreze spices that are burning? Why is that permissible? What's the reason why that's okay? You're having the grind. You can't let the grindstone go around. So the Gemara answers, Mishum lo kovid ma'isa. Because that's not really, you're not doing anything. It's happening by itself. The gofris, once you light it, the gofris is actually just burning on its own. The what's the other thing?
And the water
mugmar
was
is
flowing too.
right. We'll come to the water in a minute. But the grindstone is actually the malacha is being done as it is. In other words, it's actually doing the stuff, my stuff. The fact that something is putting a fragrance in the air is less of a direct cause on something else. The fact that the utensils are being tarnished, that's not really a change in the utensil. But the fact that I'm grinding is a malacha. So that's the first answer for Gafris Mugma. Gafris Mugma, my tamashara, mishum lo kovid myself. What about unin shel pishtan? Now we go back to our Mishnah. Forget the brisa. What about the pishtan that you put into you put into the pot? You put it into the fire. The bundles of pishtan you put into the fire to get white. My time is shari, mishum lovid maisi. Once again, you didn't really do anything. It's doing it on its own. It's standing on the ground. And what's doing the work? The fire is doing the work on its own. The Rechayim is doing more direct work on this item. So the pishtan seems to be just absorbing on its own the white, whereas the mill is really going at it on its own and doing the work on Shabbos. Mishum lo avid ma'aseh, mishum lo avid ma'aseh, umeche umenach neichen. Simply stands there. The pishtan is standing there. You simply put it in the fire. What about mitzudas chaya ofas dagim? What about catching fish, catching animals, birds and fish? To call avid ma'aseh, you're doing something. You're catching them. The trap is going down on the animals on Shabbos. Are you guys with me? Mm-hmm. The trap is going on the animals on Shabbos. So my time is shari. So the Gemara says hasam nami beleche v'kukari lo kavid ma'aseh. So lechi and kukari is I'm not really doing anything. Okay, let's show the picture. Okay, I'm not sure if this is the picture. If this is where the picture up here, that's really right. But these two pictures are the right pictures here. Sorry, these two pictures are the right picture. I'm not sure if the fox pictures are really meant for kids. Okay, but here, this is where I showed you. It's like you're not actually trapping. The bird traps itself. Like you're not trapping the animal. It's not like you have a trap coming down. The bird pulls the trap. The bird catches, and the fish. Let me explain to you what this picture really looks like. I once gave you a page with pictures on it. This is one of them. The fish himself catches himself. The fish goes into this. This is like bamboo, reeds. It's not a hat. It's reeds that are wrapped together. They're thinner in the front and thicker in the back. The fish goes in the head first, and it gets caught by the gills and can't back out. So you're not doing anything. This obviously is attached somewhere onto some kind of thing. You can catch it later on. Sure. So it's not that you're catching it and you've got a net that comes down on it. The fish catches himself. So in other words, what are we really saying? The fish has an independent brain. The bird has an independent brain. Just nothing about you. So the other case is it's happening by itself. The case here is the fish or the bird does it to himself. Doesn't we explain about chaya, how chaya really gets in? Okay, but let's leave that for a moment. So lo kavid maises, the belechi. The kukari lechi is the pole that comes down on the bird that puts it into the pit, and the kukari is where it comes down where the fish catches himself in this kind of narrowing thing. Lo kavid ma'aseh. Okay, v'hashta the Amar Rav Oshayim Ravasi man tana shvisas kem deraisa beishamahi v'lo beis Hillel. Right? And now this is a little complicated. Let me see if we're going to do it now. According to Rabbi Shaya Rav Yosef, who says, who's the author says Shvisas Kalim is Minatorah, is Asr, is Beis Shammai, not Beis Hillel. Le Beis Shammai, Bein Kovid Maisei, Bein Lo Kovid Maisei, Asr. So whether you do an action or don't do an action, it's going to be Asr. Le Beis Hillel, Afagav the Kovid Maisei, Shari. Let's see if we can finish off the next few lines. All right. And according to according to Rav Oshai, who says that the lot of Shvius Kalim is the Raisa Beis Shammai and not Beis Hillel, so which means that your Kalim can't work on Shabbos according to Beis Shammai. So the Beis Shammai, whether you did an action or didn't do an action, it's usher because your Kalim are working. And the Beis Hillel, Afagav de Akavid Maisi Shari. So, in other words, the assumption is at this point that the reason that the Rechayim, Beis Shammai, and Beis Hillel will agree to this is because it will not make a difference whether there's a doing a malach or not. All of the items that are done automatically are also according to Beis Shammai if they're working for malacha, if the item is working on Shabbos, and Beis Hillel will say it's automatically mutter. Let me see if I just get beyond this line. According to Beis Shammai, even if you didn't do a maisa, it's going to be aser, because now we'll say the other way around. The mission is not Beis Hillel, or the mission is Beis Hillel, but Beis Shammai will require not to do, will make it aser even if you don't do a maisa. Ihachi mugmar, the gafris, my time is shari. So why will Beis Shammai, I'm not sure I understand fully all the lines here, but why will Beis Shammai allow Mugmar and Gafris if all of them are Aser, even if you're doing nothing indirectly?
Right.
So even if they're just sitting in a keli. So the Gemara says, Beis Shammai, my time is Shara Beis Shammai, so Hasam Manach A'ara. So Beis Shammai says that Mugmar and Gafris are not sitting in the utensil. There's no kli that allows it to be done. In other words, I can't have a kli according to Beis Shammai do anything, but the Gafris, the sulfur and the Febreze is not sitting in a kli; it's sitting on the ground. What about Gigis, Venera, Kadera of a shipud? What about all the things that do have a kli? How will Beis Shammai actually allow this to take place on Shabbos? My time is shari, and we do these things. We have lights that are on. We have pots that are sitting in a stove. We have the shipud was the spit that they put the carbon pesach in on Shabbos. Can we do these things to continue on Shabbos? Even a Beis Shammai would say they're wrong. So the Gemara says Beis Shammai, my time is shari Beis Shammai. The mafkir lehu afkure. That the Beis Shammai would say that really we make them hefker. These items even though we don't say they're hefker, but we consider them to be hefker, and therefore we're not, when we put the things on and we light the candles and we put the kedera on the pot on the flame, we're saying and considering even to be that Beis Shammai would say, even though you have to have your kalim stop, either it's not in the keli, or the keli itself, I'm making hefker itself, which is very unusual type of an answer, because normally hefker, you've got to make a statement in front of people. Absolutely. There have to be 3 people to hear you say and make hefker. Here the person not only didn't have 3 people present, but he did not say anything. But that's what the Gemara ends up in terms of, at least according to Beis Shammai itself. Okay, so this is everything as far as we get. I know I kind of scrambled up the last couple of lines, but this will be far enough to take us to the place we can stop and pick up for the next thing, which will be a little different. Okay, stop here.
When are we continuing?
So,